Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. We've got another show packed full of more than we can probably do in the time allotted here. So I hope you're enjoying the weather. It's definitely feeling like winter, and by now you're feeling a good taste of Vermont winter because, like I always bring up, this is pre-recorded, but I'm looking ahead. And by the time you're hearing this, it's going to be pretty chilly. So hopefully wherever you're listening from, the heat is up. You have plenty of wood on the fire, so you can sit back and enjoy the show and not be worried about exactly how cold and how much snow is on the ground outside. So I want to jump right into this. And the first thing I'm going to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, which is going to be the hottest topic this upcoming session beginning in January in the Vermont legislature? What do you think? I think it's going to be a three-way tie, actually. It's going to be public safety, affordability, and housing. They're going to be, I think they're equally as important. You don't have one starting to improve without the other starting to improve. But I want to at least start out the show, and probably going to wind up in two segments here, dealing with public safety. Public safety, I think, is going to eke out all the other issues, and we have plenty of issues to deal with. But I just, every week, at least once a week, 2-3 times a week, I talk to people who are absolutely livid that the public safety issues here in this state are not being resolved. And most of it is because of your legislature, okay? And I want to talk about one of the acts that is causing the problem and really does need to be at best refined, let's call it that, for lack of a better word, and or at least refined, and at best repealed. Okay, this is Act number 180 of 2024. This was H645. This came out of your 2023-2024 session. It was not liked by the governor, but your supermajority gave it to you anyway. So I want to just go over the Act summary as according to legislature.vermont.gov. Act number 180, H645, an act relating to the expansion of approaches to restorative justice. Subjects: criminal procedure, crimes, restorative justice. This act creates pre-charge diversion programs for both juvenile and adult offenders, as well as streamlines the statutes for the diversion programs already in operation, which are now referred to as post-charge diversion. This act also creates a post-adjudication reparative program working group to study connecting appropriate community-based providers to individuals who are sentenced to reparative boards or probation. Additionally, there are various reports required to examine stable funding structures and state administration to support community-based restorative justice providers, record retention and deletion requirements for diversion programs, and funding alternatives for community-based diversion referrals. Specifically, the pre-charge diversion programs are administered by the Office of the Attorney General and permit directly referrals from law enforcement or a prosecutor to diversion when either determines that probable cause exists of a person's wrongdoing, aka crime, but the person has yet to be criminally charged or a petition is filed in family court. Each county state's attorney must adopt a public-facing pre-charge diversion policy outlining various eligibility criteria, required documentation, and other procedures. The pre-charge diversion programs have various rights and responsibilities of participants and victims alike. Now, I want to break from this explanation. How many of the victims out there, how many of you are victims, and do you feel like you are being served by this program? I'm going to guess very few of you feel that way. Let's see, including the right to access counsel at public expense for the candidate, and the right to certain diversion information made available to the victim. Successful completion of the pre-charge diversion program leads to record of the underlying incident being deleted if certain requirements are met. The Attorney General is also responsible for maintaining an index of cases and funding the community-based restorative justice providers involved. Post-charge diversion remains the same, except expungement no longer requires the court to be satisfied that the person has been rehabilitated. It had multiple effective dates beginning on July 1 of 2024. So, now, the reason I brought that up is so when you're discussing your friends, family members, neighbors, whoever, who are the victim of a crime, part of, in my personal opinion, part of the problem we have is Act 180 of 2024 and what it has enabled as far as criminal activity. And I say that because we have this program that, although is well-meaning, it sounds good, but we know, we have proof that it's not working. How do I know that? Because I hear week after week, day after day, about more crimes being committed, petty crimes, mostly drug addiction related. But we don't have the programs and the force of law right now to make people make a choice. Go to jail for your crime or go into recovery and do not leave until you have your addiction under control. And you realize the pain and the heartache and the financial burden you have put on your friends and family members and community members so that we don't have you as a repeat offender in our court system. And I've talked at length, and I will not stop talking about the broken windows policy, ladies and gentlemen. Quality of life crimes. This is what we're dealing with here. What makes people decide after decades, after generations of not locking their homes and their cars, of leaving their possessions on their own private property out, easily accessible to them, and now finding out that they can no longer do that. Residents, hardworking, tax-paying Vermonters can't live their lives the way they have lived them for generations. So I wanted to start off with that, and then I want to cover an article here, this from FYIVT.com. Let's see, dated December 6, 2025. Diverted cases, deferred costs. Who really pays for Act 180? In 2024, Vermont lawmakers passed Act 180, a wide-reaching bill designed to expand restorative justice programs across the state. And I want to break right after the first sentence, restorative justice. Does anybody believe there's any restorative justice coming out of these programs? Now, I want to give you another catchphrase that's a very popular catchphrase of the progressive left, Democrats, progressive Democrats. Harm reduction. Harm reduction has become more harmful. It's a fact. Harm reduction is an oxymoron. It's crazy to think some of these sound feel good catchphrases do the exact opposite. The exact opposite. And this is why we have the law of unintended consequences and too many people who are elected officials who are not ready or willing to reverse course. We need to reverse course here, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's see. Championed by a coalition of Democratic legislators, including Representatives Karen Dolan, Angela Arsenault, Ella Chapin, Kevin Christie, Martin Lalonde, Barbara Rachelson, and Senate President Pro Tem Philip Baruth. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, all still currently seated in our legislature. The bill focused on reducing court backlogs and offering alternatives to traditional prosecution for minor offenses. I'm going to break again. Does anybody believe that this has reduced court backlogs? It's only created, in my view, repeat offenders, because it just is very apparent that criminals have found out, people who happily commit crimes have found out that they will be turned out again. Let's see. Governor Phil Scott vetoed the bill, expressing concerns over its impact on public safety. I guess he was right, wasn't he, ladies and gentlemen? But a Democratic supermajority in the legislature overrode the veto to enact it into law. And I want to just break one more time. Okay, there were record number of seats flipped, changed in the legislature this past year. Only a year ago, just a couple, 3 or 4 weeks. And one of the reasons why is because the legislature didn't listen to the electorate. They didn't listen. And if you pay close attention, and that's one of the reasons why I get behind this microphone every week to try to remind people why they paid attention last year and why I still think it's very important to pay attention this year. Even more important. So, Act 180 represents a significant shift in Vermont's approach to criminal justice. Its advocates argue that restorative justice reduces recidivism, lowers cost, and addresses root causes of criminal behavior. However, the practical effects of this approach, particularly on local law enforcement and small communities, are raising questions about the law's unintended consequences. Now, we've talked about unintended consequences, ladies and gentlemen, on this show, just about every other show. And the problem we have in most legislatures, not just in the Vermont legislature, is when we realize a program has a problem. One of the options that's never on the table is to get rid of the program because it didn't work. And we're finding out that this program is not working. Now, I could make it work. You want me to make it work? I could make it work. We could take some of these people who are the advocates of it, who swear it will work, who swear they know better than you and me, and you and I know that accountability for crimes. You stole something, you will either repay that or you'll go to jail. If you're someone who is addicted to drugs, whatever they are, who cares? But if you're committing crimes and you're ruining your family and you're ruining your life and you're going to wind up dead anyway because you're addicted to these, then you need to come to the realization that you have a problem and work through it. And part of that is accountability. And we have no accountability in this system right now. We have none. Otherwise, this court diversion would be working. It would show that we have this system that has worked. Couple the court diversion with the revolving door and the cash bail issues that we have in this state. And this is why you hear at the local convenience store or the local mom and pop shop or the gas station or at the water cooler at work that you've got a friend or a neighbor or a family member who has been a victim of crime again and again and again. And we see it. We know it's happening. I just had messages this morning from someone in my district who had to deal with it. And now somebody who is a working member of the community is without tools to go and finish jobs that this person is committed to be able to pay his own bills. It just is, it's maddening. All right, let me get back to the article here. Success rates and challenges in diversion programs. Restorative justice at its core is designed to rehabilitate offenders by addressing the root causes of criminal behavior through community-centered solutions. For first-time offenders, diversion programs are often cited as promising, with a focus on personal accountability and community engagement. However, the numbers are starkly different for individuals with prior convictions. Repeat offenders in Vermont's diversion programs showed a recidivism rate of nearly 90%, aka it's not working, highlighting the challenges in preventing reoffending among those with established criminal patterns. And we know there are established criminal patterns, ladies and gentlemen, because you and I keep hearing about them all the time. So, like I said, this is going to be more than one segment. I just think it needs to be covered. A lot of people are thinking about it. They don't like it, so we're going to talk about it. We've got to take a break, pay for some bills. We will return. You're listening to Right Side Up.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. We're talking about public safety again. Why are we talking about it again? Because you don't feel safe and you're expressing your concerns over it. And I cannot say that I blame you. And you are rightfully angry about it. And I cannot say that I blame you. So, one of the key takeaways you need to take from this is law enforcement are not your enemy. Your local sheriff, your local police department, your state police are not your enemy. They are not the ones who impose this on you. They have been given a set of parameters to operate inside of, and unfortunately, this Act 181 is those parameters, or part of those parameters, and they're not working. So like I said, one of the things is repeal this. The other thing is find the things that we know are wrong and fix them, and fix them ASAP because people are not happy. So let me get back into the article here. The policy intent of Act 180 is clear. Divert minor offenses from the court system to lessen judicial congestion. But critics point to Vermont's dramatic increase in, quote, quality of life crimes, a.k.a., ladies and gentlemen, broken windows policy. When we have law enforcement that's able to adopt these policies and actually carry them out, you will feel more like yesterday when Vermont was and is safer. Feels safer. You can leave your house unlocked. You can leave your car unlocked because you know there are consequences for people who mess with your private property. Let's see. Quality of life crimes such as petty theft, vandalism, and disorderly conduct. Now, I want to break again. Petty theft. How much is petty theft? I was just reading a post. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this morning, about a contractor who had numerous tools stolen from him. Numerous tools. Probably totaling north of $1,000 by the time you get done replacing them all. Not including time lost, okay? Not including time lost. So this petty theft is no longer petty theft. So let's see. Offenses that have been proliferating in the wake of restorative justice policies. Yes, ergo, that's why we're doing this on the show, because they've been proliferating for quite a while now. For many Vermonters, these make life miserable crimes are more than an inconvenience. They disrupt the sense of safety and well-being in small communities and stretch the resources of local businesses and police departments. And this is why, again, I'm talking about this. This comes up with me in conversations with people all the time, numerous times during the week, sometimes numerous times during the day. In response to these trends, many residents and local leaders argue that the benefits of restorative justice have come at a tangible cost to community security. Local businesses in particular feel the impact of Act 180 when it allows perpetrators of minor larceny, for example, to be diverted from prosecution. For small family-run operations or farm stands, a $250 theft is not minor. It can represent a week's income, essential stock, or irreplaceable goods. Multiple such losses could be catastrophic. Yet under the current law, these crimes are often directed into restorative programs rather than the traditional justice system. Now, I want to give you, in Orange County, you may, in your travels through Orange County, you may see signs that say, "We stand with Wayland." And those signs came out of a frustration of a local business owner who I met this past summer, who got so sick and tired of hearing that the police couldn't do something that he acted on his own. And it wound up with him involved in the criminal justice system. And this is what I do not want to see, ladies and gentlemen. The frustration, and I hear it. I've had people look me in the eye and tell me, I feel like I'm being pushed into a corner. So we need to have the legislature understand, our current legislature understand how upset you in the public, the electorate, the people who we serve, everyone in the legislature needs to know how upset we are. So you go on legislature.vermont.gov and you find your legislator and you send them an email. Be polite, but it can still be a strongly worded email, and let them know how dissatisfied you are with Act 181 and this so-called restorative justice. So let me get back here. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of Act 180 is the shift in workload from courts and state's attorney offices to local police departments. Before Act 180, police officers typically issued citations or made arrests, while the state's attorney determined eligibility for diversion programs. With the new pre-charge diversion protocols, police officers are now required to assess each case's eligibility on the spot. They must weigh various factors such as offense type, public safety risk, and victim considerations. These are not typical duties for a police officer. Was a crime committed? Yes or no? Make the arrest or not? Bring them in, process the paperwork. Now they have all this extra workload. Eligible offenses under Act 180 include minor larceny, disorderly conduct, and simple assaults. Now, simple assault. Who wants to deal with simple assault by somebody who knows, because we have this system, that there will be virtually zero consequences? So this system is deeply flawed, ladies and gentlemen, all of which contribute to the increase in, quote, quality of life crimes that Vermont residents are reporting. These changes place additional burdens on local police. Officers must not only assess eligibility, but also document the case thoroughly and refer it to diversion programs. Let's see, adding time and paperwork to each case. If a referred individual fails to complete the diversion program, the case returns to the police, who must then restart the prosecution process. So now it's more work for our already overworked police forces, law enforcement officers, who have been getting a bad rap now for a very, very long time. Let's see. For small departments, this additional administrative burden can strain resources, particularly when officers' time is already stretched by responding to repeated calls from the same offenders. Now, I know just about everyone in the listening audience knows someone who has this complaint. Repeated calls because of repeat offenders, the same offenders. Without state funding to support these new duties, local departments are forced to cover the costs, ultimately funded by local taxpayers. Local citizens bear the financial weight of a state program that is intended to lessen judicial backlogs, but instead redirects workloads onto community resources. Let's see. For local taxpayers, Act 180's shift of responsibility to local police departments represents a complex budgetary issue. Local tax dollars fund police departments with the expectation that officers will address community-specific needs and focus on public safety. However, Act 180 effectively redistributes the burden of certain criminal justice functions without redistributing funding. Meanwhile, courts and state's attorneys' offices maintain their usual budgets despite the reduced caseloads, with any efficiency gains benefiting state-level agencies rather than the communities bearing the additional workload. Additionally, the make life miserable crimes that have increased under this model disproportionately affect smaller businesses, like the person I told you who just did a post about all of the tools, probably numbering in the thousands of dollars lost, which can often lack resources to absorb repeated losses. The frustration is palpable among business owners who feel the diversion of cases away from prosecution devalues the impact of these crimes, and they're exactly right. Many argue that for restorative justice to succeed, there must be a clear distinction between large-scale retail theft and theft from small, vulnerable businesses. As police departments take on these new roles, there is also an added cost in training officers to assess diversion eligibility consistently. Officers need to understand not only the nuances of eligible offenses, but also the broader impacts on community safety and small businesses. This training, if not funded by the state, represents an additional financial strain on already tight local budgets. Attorney General Charity Clark, a supporter of restorative justice reforms, played a key role in Act 180's development and implementation. Clark has advocated for policies aimed at reducing recidivism and expanding community-based solutions to crime. However, her office has faced scrutiny from local leaders who argue that while these policies aim to address systemic issues, they also place heavy administrative and financial burdens on local police and taxpayers. As Vermont experiments with Act 180's restorative justice model, the question remains, are the benefits worth the trade-offs? And I would say most of the victims would say, hell no. While reducing recidivism and judicial congestion are commendable goals, the burden placed on local law enforcement and communities is a tangible daily reality. Many critics, from local taxpayers to small business owners, argue that the state should bear responsibility for its programs by providing financial support to local agencies tasked with implementation. The architects of Act 180, including Representatives Dolan, Arsenault, and Baruth, envisioned a Vermont where restorative justice creates safer, more resilient communities. However, as the impacts play out, the feedback from local communities suggests that the model may need reassessment. I'd say that is an understatement, ladies and gentlemen. Many argue for a more balanced approach, one that provides funding to local law enforcement for their expanded role and that recognizes the impact of quality of life crimes on small communities. Without these adjustments, Act 180's legacy risks becoming a cautionary tale about well-intentioned policies with unforeseen costs. As Vermont continues to navigate this path, local voices and the real impacts of diversion will need to be front and center in any future policy discussions. And I can't agree with that statement more. People who have been complaining, not just to me as a legislator, but many other legislators, to law enforcement officers, police departments, sheriffs, state's attorneys, they all have been expressing their concerns. The question for us is, will we as legislature act to allay those concerns? Let's see. Without these adjustments, the Act 180's legacy risks becoming a cautionary tale, again, about well-intentioned policies with unforeseen costs. So, the unforeseen costs, other than somebody in a small business not having the proper insurance to be able to cover these thefts and then being able to make enough money to pay for the insurance premiums, you then have to take out the time of your day, in your day, to be able to go and purchase all the new tools, because unfortunately with this restorative justice system, the tools, if found, might not be returned immediately, which doesn't help the victim of the crime, does it? So there are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of people who are frustrated, meaning the public at large, who just want to live their lives peacefully and not have to worry about did they lock their car, did they lock their home. And, a locked door is locks are for honest people, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be clear. Locks are for honest people. If you have somebody who's they feel that they're desperate, they're going to be more and more willing to commit these crimes. So I know this is something that we're going to continue to talk about because, honestly, until the situation changes, public safety is going to, I believe, like I said, it's going to eke out all the other issues that we have in this state, and there are enough that we'll be busy on this show for quite a while. So we've come to the end of another segment. We've got to pay some bills, so we will be returning shortly. You're listening to Right Side Up.
Hey, this is Steve from Granite Rock. I'd like to thank Mike Tagliavia and Right Side Up for being part of Granite Grok and Grok Media LLC's podcast network. You can check out all our programs every night of the week at 8 p.m., except on Tuesdays when we do Granite State Live, which starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Please make sure to check out all our programming, including Grok Talk, Granite State Live, Justice for All, Right Side Up, Manch Talk, The New England Take, and our newest edition, The Elsa Kurt Show. You can also check out content from Shadowband, The Blue Collar Intellectual, The Generation Report, and the Vermont Podcast. And be sure to visit GraniteGrok.com for news and opinion you can't get anywhere else.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. I want to switch gears here once we get back into our discussion, but I want to remind our listeners, if any of you feel like dropping us a line, rightsideUpradio@gmail.com. If for some reason you can't hear us, listen to us on WNTK Radio, please go to WNTK.com. Find the podcast button, click on it, scroll down to find Right Side Up, and you can listen to any number of our shows. You can find us on Podbean. You can find us on 802 Scoop Facebook, 802 Scoop YouTube, and you can also find us on GraniteGrok.com. So I want to switch gears here to the affordability issue. Affordability is, to me, it's got a lot of, it's more than just one thing. Affordability is, it has to do with the cost of our energy, whether it be our heating fuels or our electricity. Affordability has to do with our education taxes and property taxes, and it also has to do with our price of our homes. So this is one of those things that I saw an article last year. I think we covered it on the show. I cannot remember, but it seems to be coming up every year. And this again is from FYIVT.com. This is dated December 7, 2025. Let's see. Is Montpelier coming for your wood pile? Okay, so all of these things, all these freedoms that we have, all these options. Life is about options, right, ladies and gentlemen? It's about options. Think about the car you drive. How many options does it have? How many choices did you have when it came to the make, model, and year of the car you wanted to drive or truck? How many options do you have in your home? The size of the windows, the type of windows. All of these things, the flooring in your home. How many choices did you have when you put that down? You have the choice to change it. What about the insulation? All of these things are choices. Excuse me. And they're based on a lot of things. And most of it is your pocketbook. How much money, excuse me, do you have to be able to make improvements to make your life easier and more affordable. So this article I thought was it needed to be covered as well. There's like I said, there's a lot to cover, and I never have enough time. But and these are things that not a lot of people talk about, but they still need to be talked about, I think. Vermont likes to call itself a leader in combating climate change, but leadership implies setting an example others want to follow. Instead, Vermont is becoming a cautionary tale of what happens when ideology trumps practicality. The result, a state struggling under the weight of policies that deliver the opposite of what they promise. And then we just talked about the opposite of what they promised in the last segment, ladies and gentlemen, right? And the latest target is your firewood. Lobbyists and environmental groups are quietly pushing to sideline firewood as a heating option. Now, that's never going to, I cannot see a day when that's going to happen in the state of Vermont. Arguing it contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and local air quality issues. Now, first of all, greenhouse gas emissions, we do not have a worry about that. When you look at all the data honestly, and I say honestly, we don't have a problem with that. Number one, here at Right Side Up, we understand that climate change is something that's been happening for millions of years. And by saying millions of years, I'm acknowledging that since there were no cars and very few humans millions of years ago, and the climate was changing then, that we are not the key problem. And that CO2, the gas of life, is not a key problem. So I just wanted to get that out. Let's see. Through proposals like the Clean Heat Standard, they're urging regulators to exclude firewood from Vermont's approved heating methods. This effort comes despite wood heat being a lifeline for generations of Vermonters. It's renewable, locally sourced, and dependable. These are key to remember. It's a renewable resource, okay? We talk about renewables all the time. Wood is a renewable resource. It's locally sourced. In other words, it doesn't take a lot of freight to get it from point A to point B, and point B being your wood stove. And dependable. Dependability is a big deal. Solar and wind, and I can remind you, ladies and gentlemen, I live off-grid. I avail myself of solar, generator, and battery backup. But solar is not dependable. Wind is not dependable. And we need to keep this in mind, especially during the state's brutal winters and frequent power outages. Yet in the name of reducing Vermont's already infinitesimal global greenhouse gas contribution, 0.015%, policymakers risk driving up costs, again, eliminating options, and leaving rural Vermonters out in the cold. Literally, leaving rural Vermonters out in the cold. All right. Regulatory signals against wood heat. Let's see. Recent discussions at a Vermont Public Utilities Commission Technical Advisory Group, the PUC at their TAG, meeting reveal growing skepticism about wood heat. Concerns focused on emissions from cordwood stoves and boilers, with some participants labeling them, quote, high emitting and inconsistent with public health and climate goals. Well, if someone freezes in their own home, how is that consistent with public health, ladies and gentlemen, if all you can afford is firewood for your stove? These are the things that too many people who are too removed from reality don't take into consideration. Nora Travis of, let's see, I have this acronym here. I've got of the Northeast States for Coordinated Air Use Management. All right. Nora Travis of the Northeast States Coalition for Air Use Management stated cordwood boilers are, in fact, quite high emitting, to the effect even of more concern than stoves. Similarly, Brian Woods of the Agency of Natural Resources questioned Woods' carbon neutrality. Ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about carbon neutrality, you get into dangerous waters. Carbon is a building block of nature. And that's one of those things that you learn in basic chemistry. So this carbon neutrality thing is a very scary phrase to me. What about the carbon cycle? That's what people need to be more worried about. All right, let's see. This person, from the Agency of Natural Resource asks, it's hard to understand how a negative carbon intensity for RNG or wood fuels wouldn't distort the program. The discussion also emphasized electrification, with Ken Jones cautioning wood fuels wouldn't skew the credit system away from electrification. Electrification in this state is still a problem, ladies and gentlemen. Like we've talked about and has been talked about even in the POC and other venues where there are so few homes with 100 amp services that trying to convert homes to heat pumps that require a lot of electricity, that it's not possible. It's not possible definitely in the near future. Let's see. While advanced wood heating systems may still have a place, the trend is clear. Traditional wood-burning appliances like cordwood stoves are being pushed to the margins. The PUC's cautious tone reflects a broader shift driven by emissions concerns, public health arguments, and doubts about wood's carbon neutrality. And you can see the technical advisory group's meeting. There's a hyperlink in this article. Killington Mountain isn't the only slippery slope in the state. The Global Warming Solutions Act, GWSA, requires Vermont to adopt regulations like California's Advanced Clean Cars 2, ACC 2 standards, mandating that all new passenger vehicles sold in the state be zero emission by 2035. And thankfully, the governor, through an EO, put the brakes on this. Thankfully, very much. This effectively phases out the sale of combustion vehicles. Now, the same ideologically driven approach is targeting wood heat, another essential tool for surviving rural Vermont winters. This is one of the other things I just had a discussion this morning about. We are trying to, in Vermont, there are so many forces outside of Vermont that have found their way in that we're trying to apply urban solutions to rural Vermont. And it's not going to work. And it's already proven not to work. The financial fallout is undeniable. Replacing wood stoves with electric systems or retrofitting homes for, quote, clean heating methods is prohibitively expensive for working and middle-class families. That's why I said this is under the affordability issue. Wealthier residents might qualify for subsidies or absorb the cost. Subsidies. Remember, every time you see or hear this word, someone else's money, ladies and gentlemen, somebody else's money. But for most, these policies represent a financial strain with little practical benefit. Compounding the issue, Vermont's electric grid is unreliable, regularly failing during storms. My wood stove doesn't fail during a storm, ladies and gentlemen. I'll bet yours doesn't either. Heat pumps and electric systems can't keep homes warm without power, but wood stoves can. I've got a question for you. Are you someone who has a heat pump or two in your home? Do you have backup? I hope you do. If you lose power, your home, regardless of how new it is going to be in a severe risk if your home stays cold without power for too long. And I'm sure most of you know that. Vermont's aggressive push to be climate leader is proving to be the opposite. Instead of offering a model for sustainability, the state is showcasing the economic harm and alienation that result from prioritizing symbolic policies over practical solutions. What's green about policies that, let's see, increase costs for heating and transportation, undermine locally sourced, sustainable practices like wood heat, push rural residents to rely on an unprepared electric grid. This kind of leadership alienates the very people it claims to help, leaving them less resilient and more financially strained. I got a question, ladies and gentlemen. When was the last time you heard a legislator talk about having a good, better, best policy with respect to energy, with respect to heat? Like nuclear being best for electrification and natural gas being best probably for heat, and we don't have that really available in most rural areas, but in some of the cities we have it. But propane is one that's very good. It's not as clean as nuclear, but it's cleaner than coal, and it's probably cleaner than wood heat. But having options, like I said, a good, better, best policy is a better way to go for affordability and not having Vermonters in the cold in the middle of a cold spell like we're going to have for a short period of time, even this week. If Vermont truly wants to combat climate change, it should focus on solutions that balance environmental goals with practicality. Here's what real leadership would look like. Flood management. Invest in infrastructure to address Vermont's natural flooding risks instead of pretending local carbon cuts will stop rivers from rising. How incredible is that idea? And ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we're going to run out of time before I get through this article. So like I said, FYVT.com is a December 7th article. Is Vermont coming for your wood pile? I just needed to cover that because Vermont relies on wood heat. I rely on wood heat. I'm sure most of you do. So I hope you enjoyed our show. Please remember, stay informed, stay safe, listen to Right Side Up.